Good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming for this session on a Sunday morning. This is a special session organized to bring into light some aspects related to the bigger topic of beauty, art, aesthetics, and human development from the point of view of Sri Aurobindo's and the Mother's vision on some of these areas. And we have a very distinguished and a very eclectic panel of speakers here who bring a very diverse background. So there will be different aspects related to this larger theme of beauty, aesthetic development, and human development that we will hopefully get to hear this morning. I had prepared long remarks on these, but I would rather that we listen to what our panelists have to say. I'll just briefly say that Mother and Sri Aurobindo very much emphasized the idea of as part of the integral development of the individual, what role aesthetic development, the development of a sense of beauty, what part it should play in the overall development of the individual and also the development of the collective. Sri Aurobindo wrote essays on the national value of art. He titled them as that, National Value of Art. So certainly art and aesthetic development play a part in the life of the nation, life of the society as well. So with just that brief comment, highlighting the significance of this session, I would like to introduce our speakers now. We would begin with our first speaker for the session, Manoj Pavitran, who comes to us from Auroville. Manoj has a background in engineering. Also, then he went to study design at National Institute of Design, Ahmedabad. And somewhere in between that, he was also interested in yoga, Sri Aurobindo's transformational yoga, and found himself in Auroville, where now he is heading a very interesting project called Swadharma, which is a program directed for youth who are on this journey of self-discovery. So it's a program geared for youth from age 18 to 28. And for that, he brings in his background of design, which he thinks is also, he feels is also something that has helped him find solutions to many of the problems, not just in an individual life, but in professional life, and his yoga, his sadhana as well. So how he integrates all that as part of the human development will open our session. If Manoj would share maybe for the next 10 minutes or so, some thoughts on that, and then we'll move on to next speakers in the panel. So welcome, Manoj.
Thank you. I would like to recall 2 chapters from the Life Divine, where Sri Aurobindo is reviewing entire spectrum of human thought and various philosophies, looking at human existence and its purpose. He writes 2 chapters called Delight, the Problem, and Delight, the Solution. The ancient Upanishadic realization that everything is born out of delight, sustained by delight, and returns to delight. That insight as the very fundamental nature of existence and the process of life, if we hold that picture in mind, that will give us the clue to look at what do we mean by human development. Is it a process of returning to delight. If we are able to return to delight, are we able to hold it within us? Do we have the capacity to experience and hold delight? I would like to hold that as the reference for human development, and in that context comes art, beauty, and aesthetic sense. Art as activity that creates forms that are beautiful, and aesthetic sense as a faculty that opens us to enter and access delight. So art come in as a direct doorway to that which is very fundamental to existence. And here comes the development of faculties. Do we have the capacity to perceive? First of all, there may be a beautiful rainbow out there, but if the faculty of seeing is not there, can we experience that delight? We cannot. Even if we have our eyes open, if the aesthetic sense is not developed, can we experience it? We cannot. So there comes the whole range of, we can say, education. Education for the soul that enable us to first of all perceive what is there, and then to bring out and express. In that context, Sri Aurobindo refers to the function of art having threefold stages. First being purely the aesthetic delight, the perfection of form, whether it is physical or intellectual or emotional, any form having the pure perfection that reveals the beauty. That's like the first stage of art. If we can create beauty that gives us the sense, the experience of aesthetic delight, then comes the next stage. Without losing that profound sense of beauty, experience of beauty and the delight, can we bring in the profound depths of ideas into it, the truth conceptions that find expression in the forms through which we express ourselves. Like when Einstein came up with the relativity, that was a wonderful, beautiful idea. Science created a formula. But Dali takes up that notion, and when he paints a melting clock, suddenly the notion of time is captured by an artist in a way that is different than what it was perceived before. And that melting clock became an icon, one of the most remembered symbol created by an artist to represent a complex idea. But that is only a second stage of art. Third stage is where artist is able to invoke a presence. Not only aesthetic delight, but truth conception of great ideas, along with it, a living presence. That ancient sthapatis knew, ancient artists knew, and every artist had their creative process that first of all involved invoking the presence that is to find expression through their creative art. And that, when it spreads across a culture, when that refines a culture, the artifacts, the daily living habits, the rituals, the forms, there the presence spreads through the culture. And we had in this country that conscious presence that was invoked, an art that was always turned towards the divine in every detail. Not only the beauty, the conception, but also the presence. And as individuals, we learn to invoke that presence and bring beauty into life. The whole culture acquires that fragrance. So the nation's soul begins to express itself through that collective vessel. Here, art becomes the direct doorway to access not only the delight, but also the presence and profound ideas. So I would like to just leave it at that as a perspective and give space for others.
Thank you. And I think you left it at a very important point, because I think this really leads us into our next speaker for the day, for this panel, Priti Ghosh. She's sitting right there. She's a very long time resident of the ashram here, Sri Aurobindo Ashram. She came here as a child, if I have understood correctly. And she grew up as an artist here in the ashram itself, and she was given some guidance by the mother as well, who was an accomplished artist. And she received her blessings and to awaken the artist within her, the inner artist. Some of you probably have seen some of her works here in the ashram dining room and other places. So we are really happy that she agreed to spend some time here and be a part of this panel. And she had requested that since her mode of expression is through her paintings, through her work, through her art. So instead of giving a lecture or a talk, she would be most comfortable if I pose her some questions. And we wanted to do a little slideshow of her paintings as well, but this being Sunday, there were some technical things. We couldn't get the projector in place. But those of you who are interested, we can certainly, we have them here on the computer. So maybe we'll get a chance to talk about some of her inner motivation for few of her works as well. But Priti Di, if Shruti, can you just check if that mic is working for her? Yeah. So welcome, Priti Di.
Thank you.
Okay. I'll. Good. Thank you, Manoj. That was excellent. And I think the three purposes or stages or the three roles that art can play that you described really lead us into what some of my questions are for Priti Di. Can you describe for us a little bit about your inner motivation as an artist and how art, your painting, how your art has become a means of your inner journey, of your inner sadhana? Like what Manoj was saying, the art has always been, the highest purpose of the art has been to invoke that living presence. So what has been your experience as an artist in terms of how art can become a means of inner journey?
When I started my painting, it wasn't a career, it was just, we were brought up in this institution, and mother had arranged our timetable in such a way that we were just allotted one period on Saturday and the last period for painting or drawing. So that left very scanty time for developing your, if you had painting, any knack in painting or drawing. Then as the years passed and I grew into an adolescent, and mother was always there, so we used to paint or draw something and give it to her, and she, for everyone, she would be in ecstasy. Oh, you've painted this, you've done it for me. And so gradually, as I got interested, as to take her paintings personally, and then she used to give her comments. And I remember the first paintings that I had drawn were from photographs. And she wasn't very happy. And then she used to always insist that you try to paint something which comes from within. Now, you've painted a landscape which is taken from a calendar, but it's so very dead and dull. Then when I started to go more, trying to paint something of my own experiences, she would come out with very subtle suggestions. And she would insist that you should try to paint something which is not very artificial, but something which goes with your experience. I remember I painted a few figures, old ladies, children, who were marching towards a goal. And I'd left, it was through a cave, and there was, the cave looked more like an opening, but she said it looked more like a figure. Then she suggested, why don't you paint, say, rays of light coming out from that mouth? So then I did it, and for most of the paintings, they were more than naturalistic. It was more, after I'd read something from Aurobindo, from Savitri, or music, Sunilda's music. They inspired me a lot. In fact, you had a painting here, no? The Dancing Girls.
Yes.
That I remember, Mother had said it was a difficult year for us. It was, I think, in 19...
This is the one, right?
No.
This one,
there,
right.
there. So, it had been a difficult year for the ashram, and so Sunilda tried to portray that. Normally his music, New Year music, lasted for 20 minutes or so. And the first part was a little dragging and slow. And the last 10 minutes or so, the whole thing picked up. And there was such an exuberance of joy. I said, let me see if I can portray that on the canvas. And after a few attempts, I think I got what I wanted, that joy, the figures dancing from the upper regions, and they were bathed in this white light. And I'm sorry, you can't hear? And Well, it was appreciated, and they said, "This is your masterpiece." I said, "I don't know." Then there were most of the figures were centered around mother. The mother is, she's her relation with her devotee, like a daughter, or mother. There was the supramental descent, and then she had this experience of this massive golden doors, and she was standing in front of them, and she had a huge hammer, golden hammer in her hand, and then she said, "The time has come," and holding the hammer with both hands, she gave a blow to that door, and then the golden light came pouring. That I tried, and then I think that's
Yes,
not
yes,
here.
that's here, this one, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
And then on the same theme, I tried that mother standing in front of the doors. There were 7 of them,
Yes.
without my calculation.
That is one of my favorite. I like, this is, right?
Yes, yes. So mostly my figures were centered around mother, and for every one of these paintings I really had to, how should I say, meditate for days together. I tried so many, attempts, sketches, and then when I thought, inwardly I was happy, satisfied, then I said, okay, I do it on on the proper, the measurement I have, usually for my paintings, 24 by 32. And then, which other painting, which was, even Aurobindo walking in the wilderness, golden wilderness, in all his solitude. That was also based on lines from Savitri. Yes.
Yes. Another favorite.
Which one have I?
Then there was the one with Sri Aurobindo with children, which I think that has a very special innocence, and I want to be one of those children. So if you can just speak a little bit about this one.
You've all heard of Nirodha, no? Mm-hmm. So Nirodha had, what is it? He had written a book on...
12 years?
No.
Dream dialogue.
Pardon?
Dream dialogue.
Dream dialogue with the children. So one of my friends, she was very close to Nirodha. She said, "Why don't you make a cover for his book?" I said, "I'll try," because I've never tried this theme. I did it, and then somehow the whole thing got postponed, and I dropped it, the whole painting. Then later on, my exhibition was coming up. I said, okay, let me try this one. So I painted imaginary children all clustered around Sri Aurobindo and listening very intently to whatever he's recounting.
Great. Thank you. If it's okay with you, we can come back to you with more questions.
Sure.
But I think, again, this is a very interesting and very relevant segue into, here we have present day living master, painter, talking about the inner dimension of creating art, her process of meditating and then seeing what comes from within. So for our next, as this kind of journey continues, I would like to invite Shruti Bidwaikar, who will talk a little bit about her experience when she came across the works of some of the ancient masters, master sculptors and artists who created these wonders of Indian art and heritage that we cherish. So Shruti, if you would like to take over and just come. You can just, thank you.
Thank you. I'm grateful to both the speakers before me because they've made my job easy and set the tone and the mood of this session. What Manojji told us is about the levels of art, how art is relevant, how we can look at art, what is its utility, what is its function from mundane to the spiritual. Priti Di being herself an artist, such a beautiful expression of what inspired her to create such beautiful paintings. What I thought I would share with you is how I would look at art, because I'm also only beginning to learn painting. I have never done painting in my life, but imitation is the first way we learn, so that gave me a little bit of interest into how do we look at others' art, how do we appreciate art. And incidentally, I happened to have gone to see the Hoysala temples in Beloo and Halibid near Bangalore last year. And that was, as if I would say, my first encounter with the world of beauty in stone. I had seen other Mughal architecture and others, but somehow that was, when I saw those, Sri Aurobindo's words were resonating in my ears. And for the first time, perhaps, I did not see it as a historical work or a work done by some king or inspired by or funded by, sponsored by, envisioned by some king. Because in history, as we were young, we were always taught the political history of a particular place, temple, kingdom, province. So we never got the insight of what the artist would have felt while making it or how an onlooker would look at it. But these temples at Beloo and Halibid, very small in dimension as such, if we see as compared to Chidambaram temple or Madurai temple, they are very small as such. But the intricacies of art in granite is way more varied, way more opulent than we can find in other temples in South India. I'm not comparing, but I'm just, because I visited Chidambaram as well as this Halibid Beloo temples, and of course the Shravan Belgola, huge monolithic statue of Mahabali, 2-3 things that came to my mind when I was looking at it. One, I remembered Sri Aurobindo said that Indian art reveals itself to those who have a meditative tendency. In fact, I would like to read what Sri Aurobindo has to say, and it's I found it very strict guideline for us as such. A great Oriental work of art does not easily reveal its secret to one who comes to it solely in a mood of aesthetic curiosity or with a considering critical objective mind, still less as the cultivated and interested tourist passing among strange and foreign things. But it has to be seen in loneliness, in the solitude of one's self, in moments when one is capable of long and deep meditation, and as little weighed as possible with the conventions of material life. So what we are called upon to do is to meditate in front of the stones, let the stones reveal what they want to reveal to us. And as usual, when we tour across the country, we always go with the tourist mentality and tick off saying, I have seen this place, I have seen that place. Perhaps I had gone initially with that idea that I wanted to see this. But when I was there, luckily my teacher was with me and he told me, you see, this is not just one more temple you are seeing. This is what Sri Aurobindo has written about such architecture, and this is what it is. And when I again came back to see, I said, thank God I was not one of another tourists there who wanted to see. But I would say, I was not perhaps open enough, was not prepared enough to sit and meditate there to see what they reveal to us. But still, another thing that Sri Aurobindo, in fact, these foundations of Indian culture, those 4 chapters on Indian art, we get a lot of guideline on how to see, how to appreciate our architecture, sculpture, painting. Sri Aurobindo has dedicated each part for each of these arts. Of course, we can summarize the guidelines saying that, as Manojji said, that there is a presence. So what we are looking for in a painting is a presence, which Priti, when she says all her paintings were centered around the mother, she had already invoked the mother, she had meditated upon the mother, and she had brought out that of herself. So this is also because Sri Aurobindo says, Indian art is in fact identical in its spiritual aim and principle with the rest of Indian culture. And we know Indian culture primarily as spiritual. So Indian art also has a spiritual aim. This he wrote because we all know there were some objections raised to the fact that some sweeping generalizations were made about Indian art by some British people. And Sri Aurobindo said, no, you are seeing it from a wrong lenses. If you're just going to see the proportions of the body, the proportions of the head and the postures, you will not find beauty in them perhaps. You see a big pot-bellied yaksha over there or a Ganpati over there, you will not appreciate. But the people who have carved that out of the stone, they have got some intuition. They worked on that intuition, and that is what they have carved. It is not something physically seen and drawn, a tree, beautiful tree, seen and beautiful tree carved or painted. It is something seen from an inner vision, inner sight. And that is what Sri Aurobindo keeps telling. He always refers to the inward eye, whether in poetry, whether in art. So that was something I realized, that next time we see any other art, we have to inwardize, be very quiet, not be in a hurry to just finish off one temple in one day and go. That is how our tour is usually. How many days do we need to finish this city, this city? And so then I felt, no, it was not justice done to have seen that one temple, one wall. We could actually sit and meditate in that hot sun. Granite was equally hot, but it was very, very beautiful. How much time do I have? Okay. Yeah, it's beautiful. I can keep on telling you. But as I was saying, we get guidelines in Sri Aurobindo. He tells us why there was this, especially about the Mahabali statue, if I can tell you. People objected to it, saying this is a huge statue, monolithic statue. It's fine, it's a monolithic statue carved up, down. It is not carved down, up. And if you see, you can't even see the statue properly because the perspective is not given there, that much space is not given. And a lot of people objected to this disproportions, so to say. The shoulder is very big, the hands are disproportionately long, the toe, one of the toe finger is very long. So Sri Aurobindo says, in context of another painting there, he says, and which I felt could be applied to this Mahabali statue also, there's a serenity on his face, which even in the granite they have managed to bring in. The half-closed eyelids, there's that meditative poise of Mahabali which has been brought out. The unusual shoulder width again shows the massiveness of his endeavor perhaps. The stature is again showing the greatness of his soul. It's not a human carving. He was a saint. He was a son of the first Tirthankars. Then the disproportions perhaps have been done purposely to show him he is different from other normal human beings, which has the inner of that person has been represented in what we call disproportions. So these were the beautiful insights that I felt were how Sri Aurobindo has educated. Manojji talked about that aesthetic education that we needed to do. We needed to get from Sri Aurobindo. Similarly with Halibut temples, this small, I'm not exaggerating, this small an apsara they have made on a full pillar, small apsaras, and each apsara has equal number of ornaments from her head to the toe. All her finger nails have been made, anklets have been made, her bangles have been made. So it's not just the big apsara, it's the smallest of the creatures, they have done that. On animals, on demons, on evils, everything they have done that beautiful work. So these intricacies Sri Aurobindo has brought forth. He had seen a few pictures and he had an intuitive vision of all these, and he gave us the clue. And it will be really insightful for us to read something of this before we perhaps visit. Again, I would like to read again and again before I visit any other, even our Mahabalipuram carvings, if you have to see, they have a particular pattern, they have a particular presence to reveal. So that is all I wanted to share of my experience with these things.
I know we could go on, and I was just thinking about when I was there at Ellora. Oh my God, that's the experience that Ellora, and any other places. I mean, I've been to the places that you spoke about, so thank you. And again, I think this is very good segue into what we are going to hear next. We have next a couple of young students who were actually also students of Manoj through the Swadharma program. And they'll bring in different dimensions of art. First, we'll hear from Aishwarya. Aishwarya is, her background involves psychology, performing arts, and English literature. And she's studied and volunteered at Auroville when she was also there with Manoj in the Swadharma program. And she also studied something called kolam yoga. So it's a different dimension of art. I mean, kolam, again, there is a whole meditative process to doing that. And she's getting ready to start her master's in art as psychotherapy. So she can speak a little bit about a different dimension of art and aesthetics, both from a healing point of view and also maybe your experience with kolam and how that helped you in your development. So welcome, Aishwarya.
Thank you.
Maybe 10 minutes,
Yeah.
and then sorry, that's a tough job.
Is it working? Okay. I recently worked on compiling a module on aesthetic sense for a website on integral education. So I'd like to begin with sharing some of my insights from reading what Sri Aurobindo and the Mother have said about that. They speak of aesthetic sense as something that's really essential to progress. And they describe it as an ability to perceive beauty even where it's not apparent. This may be in works of art, in visual performing, whatever, in works of art, but it's not limited to that. We also have this experience of beauty when we witness an act of kindness or generosity. We feel, oh, that's so beautiful. This is because there's an inherent relationship between aesthetics and ethics. They both have this capacity to create dualities like good and bad, beautiful and ugly, attractive and repulsive. And this is what we need to rise above from. Because there are also times when we experience, like when we witness an act of injustice or bigotry and we find that really ugly and repulsive. So what do we do then? What Sri Aurobindo and the Mother say is that even in that ugliness, there's a hidden possibility of beauty. There's a possibility of inclusion, of acceptance, of justice, and it is that we need to focus on and energize as opposed to the hopelessness of the former perspective. I think most people here are familiar with the vocabulary of integral yoga and know of the vital being. But in my own words, I think the vital being is the seat of energy and emotion and passion and will. But it can also be really impressionable, depending on the environment that it's placed in. If it's in a good environment, it is influenced by that. And if it's placed in a bad environment, it reflects that. It's characterized by this polarity, and we often use the words light and shadow when we're speaking of the vital being. And we speak of shadow transformation. And I think cultivating an aesthetic sense is an important step towards shadow transformation because it allows you to see the possibility of light where there is shadow, because there can only be shadow where there is light.
Is your mic on?
Yeah. Okay. Okay, so this relationship between aesthetic sense and shadow transformation brings me to the next segment of what I would like to share with you today. As Beloo said, I'm going to be starting a master's in art psychotherapy next month, and I'm not yet a therapist, and I will be speaking more from a theoretical perspective on this at this point. But is it too loud? Should I hold it low? It's okay? All right. I've always been drawn to the arts. As a child, it was my only solace. I spent hours and hours just painting and writing and dancing by myself. Growing up, then it became my only strength. And I would like to speak a little bit about two art forms that I've received formal training in. Both are from here, from Tamil Nadu. One is Bharatnatyam and the other is Kolam. Now, both of these forms are very specific, disciplined forms of art, and many people would say that they don't have a space in art therapy because of their structured nature. But I think if we look at it from a Jungian perspective, they do have some kind of a role, because in both of these forms we there's sort of an invocation of gods and goddesses and other energies and like characters, and I think that these represent inner psychological forces, and in embodying them and in invoking them we're exploring that part of us also. And this is important because psychotherapy and healing is not always about fixing what's wrong, but also about fine-tuning what is already there and coming into this wholeness. There's also Freudian psychotherapy, which has a different approach. It would encourage a more free self-expression. And I recently also learned another dance form. Actually, I don't know if I can call it form because it's quite a formless dance. It's called Buto. And in that, we were very much set free from the beginning. We were told to move. We were told not to consciously try to move, but allow the movements to come to us and only move when we really needed to. This was very different for me because I've always been chasing form, and Bharatnatyam and Kolam and all these art forms sort of start up here and you know what you're supposed to make and you execute it with the body, whereas this was more I was surprising myself constantly with my body and trying to then understand what I was doing with my mind. So there are both these movements, this upward from body to mind and mind to body, there's up and down, and we know of this also in integral yoga. And I don't think that they're mutually exclusive, and I don't think that they can be treated separately. I think that there needs to be some kind of meeting of both of these forms of thinking, of psychotherapy. But there are 4 sort of aspects of art psychotherapy that I think set art psychotherapy apart from conventional psychotherapy that I would like to share with you. These are absorption, agency, catharsis, and containment. Absorption refers to this feeling of being completely absorbed in what you're doing, feeling completely present, like a child who's playing, who's not self-conscious. And this presence is really important for healing. Agency refers to this feeling of responsibility for one's own healing, which is a specialty of art therapy because the client quite literally takes healing into their own hands when they come into an art therapy session. And a lot of mental health issues have this side effect of a feeling of loss of control. So in this space, in the therapeutic space, the client can really feel like they're in control of their healing and they feel independent of the therapist because the therapist is just there sort of guiding their expression. Then there's catharsis, which is the emotional release that one experiences when we symbolically express ourselves, or even if we witness a symbolic expression of something that we're holding inside of us. And then there's containment. The artwork itself becomes sort of a container for all the unacceptable, intolerable, ugly feelings. It becomes a record for the therapeutic process, and it can be something that you either keep with you as a reminder, or it can be something you burn or offer symbolically. So this brings me back to the mother and Sri Aurobindo and what they've said about perfection. their idea of perfection is very different from the conventional idea of perfection as an absence of all things bad and wrong and ugly. They see it more as an absence of nothing, which I find so simple and so beautiful. It's this feeling of wholeness, which comes from a very deep self-awareness and self-acceptance also, I think. And that can be, again, aided by the cultivation of an aesthetic sense. So I would like to draw to a close with some suggestions from the mother on how to cultivate an aesthetic sense with children. So she says that when a child experiences ugliness or disharmony, say in their bodies, and they come up to you and they say, my arms are too fat, my face is too big, something like this, you can help them change their narrative and instead say that my arms will be harmonious, my face will be harmonious. What this does is it replaces that feeling of dejection that they came to you with more a feeling of possibility and also responsibility, because you're not encouraging them to, you're not encouraging also frivolous self-acceptance. Another suggestion from her is that when a child is drawing something they've seen or experienced, it's not advisable to insist on technique or details. At least at first, it's more important for them to just draw their impression of the experience that they had, because this helps them build their relationship with beauty. And should they want to become artists later, they would want to work on technique and all of this anyway. But it's more important for them to have an authentic relationship with beauty first. And this is not just for children. She says that beauty is something that we must all incorporate into our daily life. And so I would like to end with something that she said that I don't have written down here, so I'm just going to share my impression of it with you. She says, let beauty be your constant ideal, beauty of soul, beauty of sentiment, beauty of work, thought, action. Thank you. Yeah. I would like to end with that. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. And this again just really fits in wonderfully with what we will be hopefully hearing next from Siddharth. Siddharth is also part of the Swadharma team with Manoj, and he's also trained as an engineer, worked for a year or so, and felt that even though everything seemed right, but something was not right, or maybe nothing was right, and that journey led him to Aurobindo and to Swadharma, and now he works there as part of the team at Swadharma on using design, technology, and on integral education. He also worked on that module on beauty, if I remember correctly. And Siddharth said he would like to speak a little bit about art, beauty as lifestyle. Like Aishwarya was talking about the wholeness, how art and aesthetic sense can bring us to that sense of wholeness. So what does that mean in terms of, when he said that phrase, art as lifestyle, or beauty as lifestyle. So I'm curious to know more about how, Siddharth, you would speak on that a little bit. And so 10 minutes, and then we'll maybe have more questions and interactions.
Thanks, Beloo. Am I too loud? No. Am I audible without the mic?
Yes. I think it's better for recording purpose.
Okay.
We use that again.
Okay, so I'll be sharing my story briefly today about my journey into exploration of beauty. And I'd like to start with asking a question that how many of you in the audience here feel you are artists of, you could be any kind of artist and need not be a professional artist. Can you please raise your hands? Sorry? Yeah, I'm asking for the people who feel they are artists of any kind, they could be artists of any kind, to raise their hands. Do you feel you are an artist? Okay. Yeah, thank you. Right.
Sense of beauty.
Right.
I have not yet find out that capacity to bring that up.
So there's at least quite a few of you who didn't raise their hands. And I'd like to look into this. What is it that makes people feel that they're not artistic? So what is it that separates an artist from a non-artist? And loosely referencing the mother here, she said, an artist is someone who expresses, who sees beauty, and art is an expression of something beautiful. Now, this something beautiful could be expressed as a thought, or a beautiful composition, or a beautiful movement. But the forms of this expression need not necessarily be limited to these conventional art forms. Basically, the expression of something beautiful is art. And beauty can just as well be expressed through a beautiful glance, or a beautiful posture, or a beautiful silence, or just a simple reorganization of your wardrobe. This is all art. And Mother, in one of her interactions, said that an artist is someone who is deeply aware of the beauty around them, and someone who can see and feel things deeply, that which is not obvious to the ordinary consciousness, and express it. And to express it needs a good instrument, that is a body with good physical, vital, mental, and psychic capacities. I'd like to read an excerpt from her interactions. If you ask me, I believe that all those who produce something artistic are artists. A word depends upon the way it is used, upon what one puts into it. One may put into it all that one wants. For instance, in Japan, there are gardeners who spend their time correcting the forms of trees so that in the landscape they make a beautiful picture. By all kinds of trimmings, props, etc., they adjust the forms of these trees. They give them special forms so that each form may be just what is needed in the landscape. A tree is planted in a garden at the spot where it is needed, and moreover, it is given the form that's required for it to go well with the whole setup. And they succeed in doing wonderful things. You have but to take a photograph of the garden, a real picture. It is so good. Well, I certainly call the man an artist. One may call him a gardener, but he is an artist. All those who have a sure and developed sense of harmony in all its forms, and the harmony of forms among themselves, is necessarily an artist, whatever may be the type of their production. So that brings me to re-reflect on the question that I asked in the beginning. Do any of you who didn't raise their hands before, does it shift anything for you? Or for the ones who did, does it expand the scope of your art? Can you please raise your hands once again? Right. So at this point, I can share a bit about my personal journey in this context. And ironically, unlike all of the great people on this panel, I have never produced a piece of painting or music or danced or produced any artistic artifact. And not being able to do these things for a long time has served for me as a wheel to the artist in me. And I still can't do these things. But this wheel is slowly unwheeling itself, and gradually I'm becoming aware of beauty around me. And a simple seeing and expressing beauty in small everyday things. And also becoming aware of the lack of it. Just for instance, I'd like to talk about during a meal, I'm aware of the point at which the purpose of my eating shifts from eating to nurture the body to eating out of desire. Or talking about another instance recently I had an interaction with one of my colleagues, and we had something to disagree on, and I found that my conduct of disagreement was not so graceful. And the lack of this grace, it stayed with me the whole day. There's this gentle disharmony that I feel I'm becoming more sensitive to. And on the positive aspect, I'm able to see more of the deeper harmony in nature and beauty in people. And this is enabling me to connect deeply both with myself and with other people. And this process of deeply seeing and feeling things is gently bringing a sense of harmonization, a gradual purification and refining of the being. And I feel that behind beauty, behind the physical sense of beauty, there's a deeper sense of harmony. And this harmony is the very nectar of the divine delight. And we are beings of delight, following from what also Manoj mentioned. And this delight really nurtures us. This beauty is very nurturing for the growth of our being. And this is something that makes the soul grow, and it's also true the other way around. When we start growing from the soul dimension, we start seeking for beauty in things both inside and outside. And as we are increasingly able to access beautiful states inside, it automatically raises our awareness of sensing beauty outside. And I feel by experiencing this beauty, we get a chance to enjoy the expression of divinity in the physical world, which is the world of form. So briefly summing up my thoughts here, I feel that there's two things to growing in beauty. One is seeing, and the second is expressing. And as the soul refines, more and more becomes visible. And as the instrument refines, a natural ability to express beauty develops. So I would like to close on that thought. Thanks, Beloo.
Thank you. I think this was excellent, the way you summarized not just your thoughts in a way, it summarizes the whole flow of thoughts that's been going on in this panel. Manoj, would you like to come here now? Because I will open it up for interactions and so we'll have I have questions for all of them, but I would like to open it up for questions and interactions from the audience. And before we do that, Shruti, you wanted to add? Just briefly.
Adding up to what Siddharth just mentioned, it is very interesting the way you've narrated your journey with how you developed, became conscious of beauty around you and are becoming. I had gone to teach in Surat for some time, and there the students, we were given a topic where we had to inculcate this kind of a sensibility in the students. And it was amazing to see that these 18-year children, because they had everything at their hand, they could buy anything, they could order for anything. I didn't realize that they didn't have this sense of beauty in them. So we had just given an assignment because it was a part of our curriculum. We said, you observe a flower and you just tell us how you feel about it. Any flower you take. Out of the 40 students in my class, 20 said okay. The remaining 20 said, we can't associate with flowers, you give us something else. I said, okay, a plant. 10 said, okay, a plant. Another 10 came, they said, no, even nature, plant, all this we can't associate with. I said, okay, sunrise, sunset, 1 or 2 accepted. Another one who was really adamant on his own view, he said, there's a huge chimney that is outside my balcony, and a flame is always, it's coming out of it, and I want to observe that. I said, okay, anything that you feel beautiful, you do. And they did that assignment, and it was so amazing to see. Everybody wrote, we never thought that a flower could give us that peace. We never thought that a sunrise, I never wanted to sit in front of that sunrise even for 3 minutes, but I sat for 30 minutes in front of it. And that was somewhere I still feel it was a beautiful thing, that how, that sensibility, just because I was taught like that by my parents, of how you observe a flower for some time or appreciate a sunrise. So this was an encounter with beauty, as you're describing. So it just reminded me of this beautiful thing of how we, with little things, the everyday thing, how we associate, how we arrange the tables, how we arrange the chairs, everything we were, telling, how you remove your chappals out, everything has to do with the lifestyle beauty that Siddharth is referring to. Thank you.
Comments, questions, thoughts?
Now, after hearing Siddharth, the new dimensional vista is opening. See, I did not paint, I did not do any sculpturing, but still I can be an artist by that beautiful thoughts and beautiful feelings, and even my beautiful movements, and consciously doing everything. I think he has opened a new vista. Thank you. And I think you are not built upon that yoga form. I think you are not there.
Maybe I can.
Because more than myself, my wife will appreciate. She's sitting here.
I was about to ask about it. You have not mentioned about yoga column.
So there's someone in Auroville.
And here I want to mention, but every day I just walk on the streets and ladies they put more. There is so much the yantra aspects and it's it's amazing. And how the culture has made it by really that putting the columns, how that they are imbibing that, and how it impacts on their emotions and their approach to other things. I think that's simply commended.
Okay. So there's someone in Auroville who, her name is Grace. She's the person who I learned from. And one of the questions I get asked the most about Kolam Yoga is, why is it yoga? How is this yoga? So I think what she did is she's very beautifully drawn parallels between kolam making every day and how this can be considered yoga. One example that I could maybe give you is that you have to make a kolam. You make a kolam every morning, and no matter how beautiful it is and no matter how much hard work you put into it, tomorrow you clean it and make another one. And so this feeling of detachment from your kolam, from your creation, is something that makes it like a yogic practice. That's one thing that I can say.
But it's true, some days we won't feel like to clean that.
Yeah.
Also maybe about the four aspects of the mother and how it gets represented in the food of would you like to speak a little bit about that?
I feel like there's so much to say about that. I don't want to go in because it could go on forever. But what she's also done is she's found 4 columns that represent the 4 aspects of the mother. And I've thought about this so much, there are too many parallels to draw, but there's also in sacred geometry, there's something called isomorphic shapes. So those are 4 in number also. And these 4 columns are shaped like those. There's a triangle, a circle, a hexagon, and a square. The square represents Kali, because it also represents earth and grounding. The circle represents Lakshmi, who also represents harmony. And the triangle is Saraswati, and the hexagon is Maheshwari. 6 is a really special number, even if you look at it from a numerological perspective. Also, an interesting thing about hexagons is that why did bees choose hexagons to make their homes? Because if you draw circles next to each other, there'll be empty gaps, wasted space. But if you draw hexagons, there's no wasted space. It's all fits in perfectly together. So there's just so much that can be said about this. I would rather not get into it.
Maybe after the session also the conversations will go on. So, I have one question for both Priti and Manoj. Since you both, you as an artist and you as someone who works with youth, it's a question concerning our current education in India, which totally misses out on this development of aesthetic sense and appreciation of art. We are so focused on utilitarianism and education for success kind of a thing. So from your perspective, having worked with youth and from your perspective as an artist, if you would like to share something about what gets missed out when our present mainstream education totally ignores this sense of this development of sense of beauty and art and artistic appreciation in our students. So maybe whoever wants to start.
I think today's contemporary world is witnessing so much of ugliness in every aspect of life, emotionally or visually. Those could be smoothed out if the parents, right from the birth of the child, could surround him or her with this sense of beauty. Whether in playthings or surrounding the child with, visually all the beautiful things, then making him accustomed to good music, harmonious music. So that would be an all-round education for the child. And much of the wildness we see in the children, they could be, smoothed out, and they grow into beautiful beings.
The quality of the physical environment itself plays a very important role in invoking that inner quality. One thing that people notice when they come to Auroville is the physical beauty of the space, the way it is maintained and nurtured. That itself, without conveying, without talking about it, it does something to those who come and those who live in that space. So that's an unspoken influence that is happening continuously. And as a culture, to really value beauty and spending time and energy to make it happen. Fortunately, that culture is emerging well in Auroville, and we are blessed with that presence. And second, the way we engage with young people, where when we remove all the formalities and become simple human beings as friends and connecting deeply at an emotional level, at a nurturing level, something beautiful begins to emerge on its own. And it finds its expression. The sense of harmony, even when we encounter the most difficult challenges, most difficult situations, even ugly situations, the way, like Aishwarya was referring to, the way we look at a situation, a context, or a problem as an opportunity where there is a possibility of light, a possibility of a greater harmony. When we focus on that, we see that there is a natural outcome happening among the students in terms of picking up and tuning into that without ever having to really talk about it. So it's more of honoring that inner divinity, that inner presence, seeing everyone and everything holding that inner presence, and the more we are able to address that and honor that and remember that and offer to that, naturally there is a flowering. And this is totally lacking in our current mainstream education, and we are consciously putting a lot of effort into that space, how to really honor that, the psychic being, the inner flame. The rest are natural flowering, natural unfolding without having to detail it out.
I have a question from Priti. One of mine, so I totally love your paintings and I've been meditating on them for about a year now. And I did not know about you, and I'm seeing you and meeting you for the first time. So one of my all-time favorites is the one where there are three women,
In my head.
Go on. And I sort of interpreted it as the child inside of me, the mother and myself. And there are these three women going towards the light, and I find that incredibly, incredibly beautiful. So I wanted to know from you what really inspired. This is the one. This towards the moon.
This is also, I think, you had picked up to speak about it.
And I've had it for the longest period of time on my desktop as well. I wanted to know from you, like, what went behind creating this?
Actually, it was just, I was still a student at that time, and my teacher used to leave me in the house and then go for his own classes in our school. So I used to just dabble with colors, and that day I happened to do this, the three girls going to the moon. And this was very much in the air, mother's conception of a new form of art and expression of the future world. So when my teacher came back from his class and he saw this, he said, "There, she's got it. Something of this future painting." That went above my head, but that was it.
Mother, you seen this?
Yes.
Oh, and she said you got a future painting there.
No, it was not related. She just, it was very much in the air, that she wanted a new way of expressing beauty.
Who was part of that?
She was so lucky. The whole conception of Savitri, it was executed by Mother. Mother herself says that these are not your paintings, but my paintings. So in a way, we are all trying that, before beginning a painting, you just meditate on her, and then whatever she gives, you express that on the what do you say, on the canvas. I don't know, it just came.
As a developing artist, right now I'm having a kind of this kind of thought. What is more important, the growing consciousness of artists or technique? Because technique sometimes not very much in accord with what you want to express. How was your journey? How did you, so you learn technique, or what is?
Yes, my teacher insisted that, look, most of these artists, like my favorite was Leonardo, Michelangelo, then classical. And along with that, he exposed me to the Indian painters, the great, I should say, the giants in our Indian Renaissance. Aurobindo Tagore, then Nandalal Bose. And he used to always point out, look at the gracefulness in their figures. It's not more of the, physical, how should I say, the perfection. But they have a rhythm in their body, which is again, how should I say, what we inherited from our Ajanta and yes. And so it was a very beautiful training for me, combination of the Western art and the Indian art. I've taken lots from the Indian artists in their wash technique, and plenty of it from the Western figures. So I've been very happy with this, the combination of both of them.
Any questions or comments? Anything you would like to ask more or want to add something more? Priti, would you like to speak a little bit more about some of your paintings, or?
Was it side? Is that a pink?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or is it side?
It's there. I think it's in the first few movies, number 4. That was another one she had actually. I sent her several to choose from. Flame of Pictures. Yeah.
Yeah,
This one.
Actually, most of my paintings are based on lines from Savitri. So, at times, the pictures just flash, and I don't know from where they've come. Then, when I have finished it, as I go through Savitri, I say, well, this is what I try to express, and I paint.
The first to paint, and then you try to see something.
Yes. Or else when you read and try to put them in, it becomes more mentalized, isn't it? So I just leave it at that. As I listen to Sunilda's music, I'm very fond of Sunilda's music, and many of my paintings have been inspired by his music.
Other placed him highly. his music.
Yes.
That it came from very high street.
Yeah. After the centenary music, after he had composed that music in 72, Mother had told him 5 times, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Just as maybe a last remark, I remembered, I think you or somebody mentioned about how we arrange chappals and like beauty and harmony can be even expressed through that. And I think recently you had shared some picture, one of you had shared some picture about the Swadharma day 1 and day 5 and how naturally the chappals that people let up, how they got arranged. And the difference was remarkable. I saw it on Facebook or one of the social medias. So that was a very interesting way to capture, how naturally it outflows that sense of harmony if something inner gets sort of worked upon. So really, I think it was just wonderful that capturing of that thing. So thank you all of you for thank you for this wonderful session, and really the harmony of the way thoughts flow from one to another was remarkable. So thanks for this experience, and thank you all for coming for this session.